Live from London, it's Car Boyz. Yes, we're back, like a bat out of hell, and we'll be gone before the morning comes. What was he thinking of when he wrote that, Mr. Meatloaf? I don't know. It makes absolutely no sense whatever. It's the car show that the critics like to call the only show on the radio about cars, but with no pictures. We are back, Car Boyz. We take a global look at the motoring from a local perspective. Do you like that?
I do.
That's all right. Thank you. Whatever that means. We're not afraid to take a swing at the big car manufacturers, be they big or be they small. We just don't care. And this week we've got lots in store. We're going to have a quiz about my favourite brands, but more specifically, how to identify them. And as they said in the Mel Brooks film Blazing Saddles, badges, we don't need your stinking badges. Well, if you have a knowledge of car badges and logos, it'll help if you do know about stinking badges. We're going to take a good hard look at my mailbag, having a rummage around that bulging sack and answering all your questions. And, of course, correspondence. We'll be answering all car-related and motoring questions. Also, have a new feature called The Lost Highways, about the best motoring roads in the world. And, of course, it wouldn't be Car Boyz without the news that ain't fit to print in the news. And this week, like Donald Trump, there'll be no fake news.
No fake news.
I can't really do Donald. He's a bit difficult because you want to go to New York, but it just feels it's a bit...
It's very stop-start the way he speaks.
Very stop-start. No fake news. There you go.
Anyway, in this week's show, we're going to tackle an emerging classic car in our classic car section, where more often less is better than more.
It's true.
And this week, it's very much less.
I did have a quick look and go, oh, really?
A classic car can be yours could be an absolute money pit, but we're here. Sorry, I can't speak. We here at Car Boyz will prove that it doesn't have to be. You can literally have your cake and eat it. That really was Boris Johnson said that. We find
with a Manx kipper.
Yes, we find a classic car that we can use every day, pretty much as a runabout, but it will still have that edge over a brand new Korean box. And this one really is good. It'll be a good motor that you can afford to buy, just something very, very different. We'll also have a tribute to an unsung hero of the motoring world in this week's car icon. And this week, it's a guy from Blackburn in a flat cap.
Oh, okay.
But we'll give you a shout out to all those men and women in the car world who did something amazing. And this week, he's an absolute genius. And as Rich, my co-host, mentioned, all the usual stuff is here. We've got the classic car feature. This week, we say, "Das ist gut" to the East German Trabant. And as we said, we'll be talking about the unsung hero this week in the car icon, which will be the man behind the Cosworth brand. I'm Simon Sujuan, and it's time to play the music. It's time to light the lights. It's time to meet them up. So I'm out patrol tonight.
Thank you, Kermit. And I'm Richard Green. Meet the gang because the boys are here. The boys to entertain you with music and laughter to help you on your way. To racing the rafters with a hey, hey, hey. So meet the gang because the boys are here. The boys to entertain, boys to entertain, boys to entertain you. You'll never see that TV show ever broadcast again. And this is Car
Boyz.
There you go.
Lovely boy.
Lovely boy. Oh no, hang on. I forgot to say what I was going to send of that at the end of that. Boys to entertain you. I should have gone. Shut up.
Or gone CARBOYZ.
If you're under the age of 40, you're going. What are you talking about? Well, kids, go to YouTube and look for a TV show called It Ain't Half Hot Mum. And that's the only place you're going to find this show. It was the 1970s. It was a different time, a slightly more racist one. Now, I've been on my sick bed all week, which has not been good. And I've been thinking about this. And all week long, this is a strange thing to sit and think about. I can't seem to work out why the French still have an automotive industry. Now, I just can't work this out. French cars have a history of being absolutely, totally unreliable, a serious liability. My brother-in-law had a Citroen Saxo. Engine blew up after only 60,000 miles. Meanwhile, I've got a friend whose Renault Megane is always in the garage with one electrical issue or another. They seem to make French cars to fail. Now, this is not it's not the history of the French car industry. I had a Citroen that was amazing from the 80s, never broke down. I did more than 50,000 miles in the car, tiny little engine, 950cc. I drove from England to Belgium once in it. I drove a Citroen BX Estate for work, big bruiser, diesel, very heavy.
Yeah.
And this how good it was. The hydraulic suspension went in it, and it still drove. But it still drove. 180,000 miles that had on the clock. Now, they used to make great cars. Look at the Traction Avant, stalwart of French engineering for almost 30 years. Citroen DS, design masterpiece. Renault 4, workhorse of the proletariat. The 2CV, I think, is arguably the very first people's car because it was released in 48.
Yeah.
Around the same time as the Beetle, but I think much more successful. And also, it didn't come with the whole Nazi thing. Maybe you argue that the French love their cars. So they're the folk that keeps the brand alive. Well, last time I was in France, the rich French drove BMWs and Audis, and the working class, well, they did drive Renaults, but they drove Renaults made in Romania. They drove Dacia Dusters, Dacia Sanderos.
So 1990 Renaults, really?
Yeah, basically, covered in dents. 1-year-old Dacia Duster, covered in dents. So where are the French cars going? Who's buying them? I've got a theory that the French government's got a big hole, and they're just filling this little hole with brand new French cars. Ici, s'il vous plaît, et maintenant, puis le hole in lot de terre. And they throw in all these cars and cover it up. So it's like the military-industrial complex. So, I mean, I don't know. It's just a theory. Just a theory, but.
If you're French, let us know. We'll give you all the details in a minute of how you can contact us. But if you are French and you know what's going on with the car industry in France, let us know.
I have it here. It's if you want to write to us. Of course, we'll be giving doing the emails towards the end of the show. It's Car Boyz, Boyz with a Z at outlook.com. Car-Boyz with a Z at outlook.com. Facebook, we're on Car-Boyz at Car Boyz 4 Zs at the end. Twitter, Car-Boyz with a Z at car_boys with a Z.
We've been really bad with Twitter. We need to improve our Twitter.
Yeah, I know. We've not been twittering. The trouble is, well, I think we're late to the game because I think everybody's Instagramming now.
Yeah.
We've come to the Twitter table quite late. I posted this. I posted today, if you saw us on Facebook,
yes,
this car I saw outside a shop and I couldn't quite work. I had to go back. It looks like somebody had taken a 205 and stretched it.
It was called
206
Sport Estate.
Yeah, so it's a 206 Sport Wagon, but it was the 206 Estate sports wagon with a big fairing around the bottom. It looked horrendous, but I was
worse than a tent.
Sorry,
it worse than a tent.
I couldn't understand the point of it. Again, it brings me. Maybe it's this guy that's buying all these French cars.
Possibly. Keeping the French industry car alive. Anyway,
yes, I was. Just give me a second, Phil, while I grab the news.
No. We're going to do the car news now because that's it. And I've got the car news up first this week. So, Molyneux.
Hang on, there comes the music.
Oh yeah.
There you go, mate.
Car news. Car news. Wasn't he a footballer? Car news. Molyneux.
He's an African player, isn't he?
Yes, he was. Bentley's in-house bespoke division has faithfully recreated the company's 1939 Corniche performance saloon, 80 years after the sole example was destroyed. The Corniche, named in reference to the French coastal roads on which it was designed to be driven, was built in 1939 as a high-performance reworking of Bentley's pivotal Mark V luxury saloon. It did differ, though. It had key upgrades over the Mark V, including lightweight steel body panels, a bespoke overdrive-equipped gearbox, and modifications to the iconic 4.25 straight 6-litre engine. Sorry, I said that wrong. 4.25 litre straight 6 engine. That's what I meant to say.
There's too many figures in there.
Exactly. Following the successful speed trials at Brooklands, and if you haven't been to Brooklands, I say go and visit it because they've got one of the Concords there, and they've still got the classic banking. Which
apparently it's a good day out, and can't you go and have a sort of trip round in a car if they've got one available?
It's all good. And they built a Tesco's in the middle of it as well, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Weird. Okay.
But following successful speed trials at Brooklands, where it surpassed 100 miles an hour, the Corniche was damaged in an accident on the French roads. There you go, it's the French again. And subsequently destroyed completely during the German bombing raid on Dieppe, the Dieppe port, where it was being stored. Despite the loss of the only Corniche produced, a stockpile of parts for future models remained, and Bentley has been able to use the original components for the continuation model. The project has been ongoing since 2001, so quite a recent project, when the ex-Bentley director Ken Lee and a team of enthusiasts set out to create a Corniche using the original parts and plans. Molnar has been chiefly responsible for the work carried out since, although Bentley claims many employees from other departments devote their spare time. It's like some guys in a shed, really.
It is, isn't it? Because we have to say, this isn't going on sale, is it? This is
it's a nostalgic thing, I think.
Okay.
But they're devoting their spare time to rebuilding the Corniche. But Bentley believes that the underlying chassis to be the original unit from 1939. But the ash frame, because cars were made of wood,
That's right.
The interior, the body have all been built from scratch. The rebuilt Corniche, which is actually quite a beautiful car, it's got these sweeping wheel arches on it, will make its public debut at Blenheim Palace's Salon Privé in September. So we'll post a picture of that. But it is a beautiful car.
Pretty car. I don't think I'm going to own one in the near future, but very, very pretty car. I mean, what can you say? Shouldn't they just still be making cars like this? I have this theory that
out of wood.
Out of wood. No, that work, but with those, it's the design aspects, I think, from the 1930s, really still, and some people say, well, it's retro to go back, but I think that's the prettiest looking designs are from the period with the aviation industry heavily involved. Teardrop, I mean, there's this thing that's got beautiful teardrop
wheel arches and
Yeah, accents, I mean, just you think that that's a fantastic looking car, and I still think that's reflected in current motor production. I don't care whether it's people say it's retro styling. I still think that's current cars manufactured like that. Moving on to security in cars. I don't think anybody will be wanting to break into that Corniche, but major security shortcomings in some of Britain's most popular cars have been revealed by Car Magazine. What car? Certain models are at risk of being stolen in a matter of seconds. Now, the three that scored worst in their keyless technology investigation are the new Citroën DS3 Crossback, which could be entered. Yes, French again. Why put a lock on the car? You can just trust people. Well, why do you need to steal it if it is sitting in landfill somewhere? Now, that could be entered and started in as little as 10 seconds using key code grabbing technology. The Audi TT RS Roadster could be driven away in the same time frame, but only if its keyless entry system was active and anti-theft motion sensor technology had not disabled the key fob. With these preventative measures in place, the car could not be entered or driven. 2018 Land Rover Discovery Sport performed better. They'll still be entered and stolen in under 30 seconds because it was not equipped with JLR's new ultra-wideband radio technology, which prevents replication of the key's radar signal by transmitting on a wider range of frequencies. So basically, it's recording the RF signal from the key to the car, lets you get inside and start it. And I thought the days of easy to break in cars were gone. I remember I had a Ford Escort and somebody literally broke into it with a screwdriver, and because you would just put it round the back of the lock, whack, 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 pop the lock. And although thankfully it had a immobilizer, so they didn't drive it away, and they just stole. I think they stupidly stole a can of gunk and some jump leads. Woo. Which I kept in a very old laptop bag. They probably thought they were getting a laptop. Good luck with the can of gunk and the jump leads. But yeah, I'm just, that really surprised me. I thought it was almost impossible to steal a car, to the extent that owners of classic cars were the ones that were more concerned about cars being stolen and still had to have the crook locks on. install extra mobilizers. And Land Rover always got a thing. A lot of Land Rover owners, Defender owners, stick the spare wheel on the roof.
Okay.
And there's a reason for this. You cannot get it in a container with a spare wheel on the roof. So what's happening? The cars are being stolen to order, whacked in a container, and shipped off to Africa. But if you put locking wheel nuts on the roof with the wheel, you can't get it in a container. So they go, I'm not going to steal that because that's going to be more hassle than it's worth.
Wow.
I know, frightening, isn't it?
I'd like to have been at that meeting though, where it says they didn't put the Jaguar Land Rover new wideband radio technology in it. There was like some Brummy going, no, yeah, we won't put that in.
Yeah, exactly. That'll cost too much. Can't do that. How much budget we got? Anyway, when are we talking Birmingham accents? It's all either Indian or Chinese accents, isn't it? Land Rover?
Yes, these days, yeah.
And I won't do either my Indian or Chinese accent because I'd like to stay on the air.
Yes. Speaking of...
It ain't our fault, Mum. Sorry, carry on.
Yes. Speaking of Land Rover is readying an all-new version of its flagship Range Rover, and prototypes are now being tested on UK roads. The latest test car has adapted bodywork of the existing model with different suspension and exhaust components visible. I like to think it's one of those trumpet exhausts on there. We understand that this new Land Rover has a BMW-sourced 4.4 litre petrol V8 under the bonnet, which is a change because everyone seems to be using Mercedes engines. Okay. Earlier rumours of JLR would make use of BMW's turbocharged V8 in future offerings were fueled further by a report that said the two firms had agreed on a wide-ranging combustion engine partnership, beyond their existing agreement to produce electrified powertrains together. So, as we've said over the past few weeks, car companies are just becoming the same companies.
Car company. So, because obviously we talked earlier about a few weeks ago about how Toyota Supra is being made in Austria by BMW. Which effectively it's a Z4 in all but name. Okay, so that's right.
The Aston Martin's using the AMG Mercedes engine.
Okay.
In it.
And when, as we know, Jaguar Land Rover, JLR haven't lost all the powertrains now. Ford's pulled out, so they can't lose Ford engines. So we're now using BMW. Okay. Are we going to end up with one factory somewhere with all these cars shoot out? There's an episode of The Simpsons where Homer wants a beer, and his friend says, "Let me treat you to Duff Export." He goes, "Ooh, Duff Export," and they flick over to a picture in the factory with a giant vat that says Duff, and then there's 30 taps coming off the thing that say Duff Export, Duff Light, Duff Original. Duff Ultralight, and it's effectively the same thing.
Yeah. And
so we'll have somebody just pop it. I mean, this is beyond what anybody could have thought of, as we discussed a couple of weeks ago with Coachworks now just being used to brand cars within companies. It's now company car brands look like they're disappearing to be involved in one homogenized car production. How? I mean, they need a new engine. I'm surprised it hasn't come from Tata. I mean, I don't know what the quality of the end, probably not great, but Tata, I know, make 4x4s.
Yeah.
So, you know, they make big trucks.
You'd have thought they'd had a big engine V8 that they would have made, or at least got parts to make one. They've got a steel production company, so they can make one.
They can, and surely there's somebody out there that's something's come to the end of its life for a larger manufacturer, and you can buy those machine parts. Say, well, this is a perfectly good car. It meets a perfectly good. We need to do some altercation. I mean, I'm just thinking of the aluminium block that was used in the Land Rover and the Stag. You know,
it was an old Chevy engine, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was an American aluminium engine, or something like that. I don't know, but anyway, this all sounds very weird. Finally, in the news, in holiday car news, almost 750,000 British motorists are said to be caught speeding in France due to a lack of knowledge about French speed cameras. And I thought 750,000 sounds.
It's the French again.
It's the French. Up yours. You can drink as much wine as you like, but don't try and speed in our country. Data shows 21% of British motorists are not aware of France's speed camera tolerances. They're much lower than the UK's. So over three-quarters of a million are said to be caught out speeding in France, which I thought was a very high number. But apparently there's a lot of people go to holiday in France due to a lack of understanding of the country's speed cameras tolerances. So most British police forces set their cameras to a threshold of 10% plus 2 miles an hour, meaning that the driver is only prosecuted if they breach the limit by that amount or more. So you can do 35 in a 36 or 79 in a 70 mile per hour zone. Although the though according to the AA, the French speed cameras have only got a tolerance of 5%. So a driver speeding on a motorway at 81 miles an hour, the speed limit would be prosecuted for going over the 80, for going over. Let me get that right. 85. Yeah, that's right. Now, the AA survey of almost 20,000 UK drivers, 21% didn't realise that. 9% of the total sample said they were driving through France this year, which equates to 3.7 million licence holders. Wow, so a quarter of those are going to get fined. Okay. A couple of things here. Your speedo does not tell you your exact speed.
Yes.
Your speedo is slightly above. So when you're doing 30, you're probably doing 28.
That's right.
I'm correct, aren't I? So if you're doing 40, you're probably doing about 37.
That's all right, because I know when I put my sat nav on, the sat nav speed is a lot less. It's about 2. Okay. Yeah. So because
it's illegal for you to for your car to show that you're going faster than you actually are. So they bring that back. Plus, they give you 10% in the UK. Now, the thought I had was, how do they pick up the fines? Because I've only driven a couple of times in France, a couple of times in Belgium. But if they stop you, the police, they come up because you've got a British car, and then it's an on-the-spot fine, and you get out euros, and all right, you French git, and you pay the ticket. But if it's a speed camera, how are they going to fine you? So I looked this up on the internet. What they do, there's sort of a Schengen-style agreement. So they send the bill to you via the UK government. You were outside Marseille. Okay. So I thought, well, I had a friend that had his English, and it's not me, somebody I know, had an English car in France and a French car in England. So his theory was he never got speeding fines. So he parked somewhere in England with a French car, and they wouldn't ticket it because they go, well, where are we going to send it to? We don't know. Rue de la what's it is. And the same with the English car in France, unless he actually got physically stopped by
the police officer.
Yeah. What are there's this garde civile, which is like there's the gendarme, and there's one below the gendarme. They still carry guns, but not machine guns. They're sort of slightly more relaxed. And so but they can trace you. Now, the way they get you is the next time you go on holiday to France, is they go, monsieur, ouvre ici. You have a speeding fine plus an extra fine to pay. So that's how they get you. So if you want to continue to go to France, pay the ticket. If you don't, fuck them. I think would be the advice.
Yeah.
But what a palaver! I thought you could get away with speeding fines unless the gendarmerie were actually there. The irony of this is pretty much you can drink gallons of red wine and the French don't seem to give a toss. You literally have to be hanging out the car, Gérard Depardieu style, vomiting. With a full range of optics on your dashboard, brandy, whiskey, scotch, gin, vodka, for the French police to give a shit. I was in France about 25 years ago for the 50th anniversary of D-Day. It was 25 years ago, and I was working partly as a security guard, and the French gendarmes turned up and said, "Oh, is it all right if we have our lunch in your cabin?" I said, "Fine." They turned up, and you would think it would be a flask, a coffee, a couple of sandwiches.
Yeah.
Maybe a packet of hula hoops. No, they were on motorbikes. They were bikes. It was a hamper. Where this hamper appeared from on the motorbikes today. That got open. Seriously, a checkered cloth, a bottle of wine,
some
baguette,
wine,
cheese.
Some Camembert.
I almost wanted them to also bring out an accordion and start going and
go good morning.
Good morning. A typical French. Then they had a couple of Gaulois outside the cabin, packed up, and off they went. And they left the empty bottle of wine. So they had a wine each on duty. I'm looking around going, okay, apparently that's okay in France. So apparently the speeding fines, not so much.
We love the French. If you're French in this bin, let us know.
Well, I absolutely adore France, but I find it is. I find the differences very, very, very interesting between the French and the British. I do think France is a great cheese, very relaxed in certain ways, slightly
nice
racist
wine.
Country.
Yeah.
Nice wine, beautiful wine, best wine in the world.
Let's move on. So that was the news for this week.
That was the news.
Woo-hoo.
Yep.
So now we're going to move on. We're going to do a classic car. And although Britain and Europe may be broken, our relationship between the Britain and the rest of Europe, there are no cars more symbolic of freedom than this week's classic car. It's a small German car that I pretty much fell in love with on a trip that Rich and I made in October. It is the Trabant. It was great fun researching this. The Trabant, though, we're talking about people's car. Its production run actually spanned from 1957 until about 1990, which in that time, that's quite a while. In that time, over 3 million of the cars were produced.
Oh, that's very good.
So it's really good. It was quite unusual for the period as well, because Trabi was made of Duraplast, which, if you didn't know, it was, if I'm not mistaken, it's cotton. It's waste cotton and plastic. That's what Duraplast is. But it was all put on a steel chassis with independent suspension, transverse-mounted two-stroke engine, and had front-wheel drive, which at the time was really unique. I think cars contemporary of that time, I'd say 2CV, Mini. Yeah. Those were the cars that were around at that time. It could be described as basic, because it was basic, with all the models being produced in the 1980s having no rev counter, no indicators for headlights or turn signals, no fuel gauge, no rear seat belts, no fuel gauge, and no fuel filler, because to fill the car up, you had to mix petrol and oil and pour it in under the bonnet.
Two-stroke, yes.
And if you were one of the lucky or unlucky inhabitants of East Germany, the state forced you to join a waiting list of 10 years to acquire one. And most East Germans were placed on a waiting list for up to 13 years, which all depended on the proximity you were where you lived in relation to Berlin. So the further out from Berlin you were, the longer the waiting list was.
Oh, okay. Right.
To buy one at the time, it cost around 7,400 German marks, which with a production ratio of 43-1. So very much oversubscribed. If you're able to get one off another owner, so if someone on that waiting list got their Trabant, they could sell it for more than twice the price. Yeah. Because that's what the demand was. As I said, the Duraplast was made from recycled cotton waste, which was from the Soviet Union, of all places, and the resin from an East German dye industry source, which was like really odd. But it was very durable, and they say that the lifespan of the Trabant was about 28 years. Wow. So just imagine keeping your car for 28 years. The original engine was a small two-stroke 600cc twin-cylinder engine producing a mere 25 bhp, so very little at all. Its 0 to 60 time was 21 seconds, and it would get to a top speed of 62 miles an hour. So if you did eventually, after 21 seconds, get to 60 miles an hour, you were only going to go 2 miles an hour faster to get to its top speed. However, it did used to achieve about 40 mpg. But by today's standards, it would produce 9 times the amount of hydrocarbons and 5 times the amount of carbon monoxide that we have these days. The Trabi had no fuel pump, so it meant that the fuel tank was above the engine and used gravity to feed the carburettor, which made for interesting car crashes because they would often catch fire. Between 1957 and 1991, a total of 3,051,385 vehicles were produced. of which 32,485 vehicles are still registered in Germany as we speak. The classic most built model of the Trabant was the Series 601, which was made between 1964 and the end of East and West Germany. The Trabant 601 was released in several different versions, including a limousine. Did we see a limousine one? I don't think we did.
No, I don't think so. Doesn't ring a bell.
Three-door station wagon, which was called the Universal, which we drove.
That's the one we had, yeah.
Yeah, the shooting brake. And also the so-called bucket car, which was used by the NVA, which was the National People's Army. It was used for the army in the forests. So it had like a canopy over it. So it was very utilitarian. Until 1969, the Trabant 601 was built with a 23 horsepower engine, and in 69 the engine was improved to produce 26 horsepower. The consumption had been reduced to about 1 litre per 100 kilometres. So it was very frugal, very fuel efficient. The top speed of the limousine was 106 kilometres an hour, and the two-cylinder two-stroke engine was 594cc, or 594.6 cc to be precise. Despite the rather frequent maintenance that the Trabant requires, a lot of these classic cars from East Germany are still quite popular and have received cult status. I went on the internet today and I had a look for some Trabants, and the top ones, the eldest ones, were going for about £8,500. However,
yes,
something more affordable, a 1961 600cc 601 version, which is the most popular, was going for as little as £2,500.
Right.
So very affordable, and I think a little cheeky car. Just imagine driving one of those in central London.
You are going to. Well, the thing is, wouldn't it be? It'd be a classic car, so
yes. So no tax from that point.
No tax. I'm guessing, although they still made it up to 1990. Yeah, so I think you're going to have to pay tax on it. How much you're going to have to pay, I don't know. But those things literally have blue smoke coming out the back. When we drove one in Berlin, you could see visible distaste by environmentalists in Berlin and cyclists spitting at us.
Yes.
As a group of 7 Trabants drove down the road. You didn't mention the did you mention the 4?
No, I didn't.
The 3, well, actually, it's supposed to be 4 on the tree, but actually 3 on the tree in our case. So the gear stick on column change, but a very interesting column change. And if you're listening in America and you think a column change is literally just pushing it down, this actually has a manual gearbox on the side of the column. So if you know how manual gearbox works in like a H motion, give or take, and sometimes they don't with various dog legs, transfer that to the side column of the gear stick, and that's how this worked. 1, 2, 3, but not 4.
If you're lucky, a 4th, yeah.
If you're very lucky.
Which the thing wasn't it, that the 4th gear was the engine, the gear that lubricated the engine? Yes,
that's the other thing with them. You have to keep them going and keep the revs up, because being a 2-stroke, if you don't, it doesn't lubricate the engine. So if you're sat at lights for too long, would the engine seize? Probably.
Yeah, it'd probably be easy to rebuild. So I think that's this week's classic, because it's slightly different. It's a bit bonkers, but very cheeky, and reasonably priced at £2,500.
I saw a real later model, which had the 1.4 VW engine in and a proper gearbox, advertised, and it was like a 1990 model for about £2,500, and it hardly had any mileage on.
That's pretty good.
That'd be an easier engine to live with, because it's not the 2-stroke.
Yeah,
it's 4-stroke engine. And I mean, obviously they're Duraplast. I mean, these cars are going to be around in 150 years, because Duraplast was the most evil body. I mean, it just doesn't. Nothing happens to Duraplast. It doesn't. You see, a lot of the Trabants are rotten underneath. The actual chassis is rotten, but the Duraplast isn't.
It's got a half-life of about 10 million years.
Yeah, exactly. it'll be after the nuclear war, cockroaches driving around in Trabants. Thank you, Simon. That was very good. I loved it. We've got now, it's a new feature that I sort of thought up this afternoon, called Lost Highways. Now, we've all got our favourite motoring roads, and we look forward to driving to. Mine is a lonely road called the Ridgeway, between the village I grew up in and my local town. Simon's, I imagine, is the North Circular at rush hour, when Tottenham Hotspur are playing at home, and you're trying to get back home. But I digress. There's a highway through Death Valley, 190 in Nevada, supposed to be amazing drive. And then there's the route from Teesside to Edinburgh. I've done this many years ago, the A38, the English-Scottish border, which is amazing scenery. It really is like welcome to Scotland scenery. You feel like you're in Braveheart.
William Wallace.
Yeah, you don't have an Australian American in it. An awful Scottish accent. Let's go to Edinburgh. This feature focuses on some of those roads, but to start off with, we're headed out towards the Far East, Malaysia to be precise. Now, this is one of my personal favourite roads of all time, not because it's a great highway, but because it's one of the most beautiful roads. Catch a plane out east, to the Far East, to Kuala Lumpur, the capital of Malaysia, then catch another plane to the chilled-out island of Langkawi to the north. It sits south of Thailand in the Andaman Sea and is known as the Island of 1,000 Islands because it's literally made up of
1,000 islands.
That's how it goes. In days gone by, it was a refuge for brigands and pirates, although in the 21st century, it's much more of a holiday island, lots of golden beaches, and duty-free prices on drinks, which is strange for a Muslim country, but moving on. Well, as soon as you've landed in the island of Langkawi, rent a car, head towards a road on an extinct volcano called Gunung Araya. It doesn't matter what car you drive, because this isn't going to be a rally stage. What I mean is you might want to take it quite easy. In fact, the last time I went up this road, I was followed by an elderly Chinese man and his wife, both sitting on a 50cc Honda Cub. And they smiled all the way up to the top. The road you want to travel up is Highway 278. It's easy to find.
Is that a radio station?
It is, Highway 278. It's a well tarmacked road. The road has great. The island has great tarmac roads. Very little traffic. There was a public works program back in the 1990s to encourage tourism and environmentalism. In fact, Langkawi didn't get too hit badly by the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami because it has maintained all its mangrove swamps, as opposed to a lot of Thailand, which has destroyed them all and opened hotels. I digress. You get off the main highway, head up Highway 278. You'll pass an army checkpoint, usually not manned. The reason is the volcano is almost a kilometre above sea level, and there's a very small military listening station on the top. But this beautiful paved road takes you through a twisting chicane that many rally stages would be proud of. Only this one goes through the roof of the rainforest. You see jungle palms, plane trees, vines, creepers, all sorts. And then there's the flora. Green vipers, pythons are often seen crossing the road. The trees are full of hornbills, birds of paradise, and there's the occasional Langkawi eagle passing overhead. As well as this, you'll see gibbons, macaque monkeys, roaming water buffalo, and it's pretty much like a trip to the safari park. The reason for this is you can't farm on the side of a volcano, and the only people going to the top are the occasional tourists and the odd military personnel. It really isn't used very often. Once you've negotiated what seems like 1,000 switchbacks, you'll rise through the clouds at the top at dawn or dusk. It's an amazing view right over the Straits of Malacca and out towards the Indian Ocean, showing you all those 1,000 islands that make up the whole of Langkawi. The best bit, though, it's all free. And it might not be a good idea if you're going to do this to tell the car hire firm you're going up there. I took 4 fat Westerners the last time I went in a 650cc Perodua Canchil hire car.
Wow.
And it struggled with the gradient. I figured I'd be okay because I thought I'll just put it in neutral to come the way if it does conk out, and we'll coast all the way down. For me, the 278 on Langkawi is one of the most amazing roads I've ever travelled. And it is sort of hard to find. You need to have a look on a map. And you go through the checkpoint thinking, should I be doing this? And you think, screw it. Okay. What's going to happen? I'm going to end up in jail. You end up, and I think the listening station at the top is the one that recorded the disappearance of the Air Malaysia flight.
Right, yeah.
I think they thought that the plane was going to head for Langkawi Airport, which can take jumbo jets. And I think that was but it is a really weird, quirky little road. And you go from the jungle. By the time you got up the top, because you're 800 meters up, it's much more of an alpine. And you need a jacket. It gets really cold when you get to the top. It's a fantastic. And there's just no other tourists on it. You're almost on your own. That would be my highway to go for.
Wow. So hopefully we've done something for our bit for the Malaysian Tourist Board. And
if they would like to
listeners.
sponsor, Malaysia Truly Asia, you can sponsor our show. All you need to do is get in touch. If anybody wants to give us any cash or anything like that, it's email the Car Boyz at car-boys with a Z at outlook.com. And over to you with the unsung automotive heroes.
Yeah, and before we do that, just to say that coming up later on, we have got those letters. We have got some letters that we're going to do. But we're going to do Unsung Hero. And this week, I was thinking about, well, who can I do for this? Who do I think deserves a bit of credit? And then it was staring me right in the face. There's a guy called Keith Duckworth. Not many people know who Keith Duckworth is, but part of his name is lent to one of the greatest motorsport names of all time. Keith Duckworth was born in Blackburn, so he did have a flat cap, and he served 2 years of national service with the RAF, during which time he briefly trained to become a pilot, but was grounded for dangerous and incompetent flying. So if there's two things that you want to be grounded for, dangerous and incompetent flying was probably the two that you'd go for. So he was reclassified as a navigator. But he claimed that it was an allergy to medication that he was receiving that caused this flying problem. So in civilian life, he became a keen light aircraft and helicopter pilot instead. But after completing his tour of duty, he finished as a navigator in 1955, but he began working for Lotus as a gearbox engineer.
Lots of trouble, usually serious. Sorry.
Yes, yeah, that's Lotus. And he actually fell out with Colin Chapman, who was the boss of Lotus, the founder of Lotus, because he would not support the cost of fixing all the parts that Duckworth felt was needed to be fixed. So yeah, just a bit like most of the British car industry. It's like, yeah, can't afford that. But after 3 years with Lotus in 1958, Duckworth, along with a fellow Lotus employee called Mike Costin, founded Cosworth. And you get the name Mike Costin, the cost from Cosworth, and Duckworth. So that's where it came from.
Okay.
And they created a racing engine design and development specialist company. Costin was obliged to remain with Lotus, having recently signed a restrictive contract for the first few years. So Duckworth essentially worked alone at Cosworth until he could be joined by Mike Costin. From the start, the company was closely associated with the Ford Motor Company, which I think we probably all know. Ford Cosworth, like the RS 500 and the Sierra and the Escort, but also with Lotus. And the two companies found early success in the Junior Formula Series in the 1960s. But it was the success in finances that moved Cosworth from 3M Barnet, which is not too far down the road from me,
that's correct,
to Edmonton. Not a lot of people know that. Their first big workshop was in Edmonton. And then eventually they moved to their current home, which is in Northampton. And they were inspired by Lotus founder Colin Chapman to persuade Ford to finance their production of what became known as the DFV Formula One engine, which Duckworth designed. Now, this engine is probably the most iconic Formula One engine, which I'll tell you about in a bit. Chapman's idea, though, was to reduce weight by using the engine as the stress part of the chassis, bolted straight onto the front monocoque tub, removing the need for a space frame around the engine, making it easier for the mechanics to maintain the cars. And that became the blueprint for Formula One cars ever since. And it was Duckworth's engine that was central to this idea. The car, the Lotus 49, was driven by the great Jim Clark and won first time out at Zandvoort in Holland. Now, to this day, Duckworth's engine, the DFV, which stood for double full valve because it was a V8 engine with two cams on each bank and 4 valves per cylinder. It remains the most successful Formula One engine of all time. This engine raced to 155 wins from 262 races between 67 and 1985. So, therefore, making it the greatest Formula One engine of all time. But his name will remain part of the Cosworth brand long after his death, which was in 2005 at the age of 72. So, Keith Duckworth, I salute you. Thank you for all the great Formula One races I've watched all over the years. So, that's him. Part of Cosworth.
Of course, yeah. Ford Sierra, Cosworth, Ford Escort, Cosworth, Cosworth. You knew when you got on Cosworth in the 90s, if you could afford that, you'd made it.
Exactly. And I never had one, so that would be a car that I'd always want, a Cosworth.
I could never afford the insurance on them. I don't know what it's like now, probably slightly less because they're classic cars, but they certainly, I heard stories of people buying a Ford Escort Cosworth for £15,000 and being quoted £17,000 insurance.
It was crazy. That was the 90s.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you very much for that. Okay, take a look at the correspondence. It's time to have a look. The Car Boyz post-sack. And as usual, it's bulging. And first off, we've got an email from Tony in London who wants to know how to improve the mileage on his car. Per gallon, I assume he's talking about here. Is there something I can buy to get more out of his Hyundai 1.6 i30?
Ooh.
Or a bicycle. Get a bicycle and leave it at home.
Any other car apart from a Hyundai 1.6 i30.
What is the optimum speed to keep your petrol consumption? Is it 56 miles an hour?
I thought it was slightly higher than that. I thought it was something like 68.
Okay.
That's the optimal speed, but I don't. We'll have to look that one up.
I always thought it was about 56.
That could be right.
I've been trying to eke it out many years ago when I was broke. 56 seemed to be the. But then I've heard other people say something like there's a sweet spot at about 78, 80. Again.
Not that we're encouraging people, especially in France, to drive at 80 miles an hour.
Obviously, Simon, I'm talking about driving on the Autobahn.
Yes.
In Germany, where there are no speed limits, or apparently some roads in Wyoming. In America. There are things that you can get, and I don't know whether they're right, the magnets that you put around the fuel pipe to supposedly give you more. But I mean, you can, and there's a whole. If you go on the internet, there's a whole culture surrounding this, isn't there? Of people that I did this amount in my car, and I get a really good mileage.
And they were driven by Woody Allen.
Yeah, they all. I can't believe I get amazing mileage in my car, and she had no clothes on at all in the back. And she was my stepdaughter. Oh no, I've taken things too far. I can't believe. So they'll coast. They'll do coasting, which is slightly dangerous. Put the car into neutral and coast along. So do
you ever put in your car these fuel additives?
Well, I've got in both my cars. The last two have been quite high performance, so I haven't done it for a while. But usually 1 in every 4 tanks, I put the super duper additive. But I'm now in a rice burner, so I could pretty much put anything in it. Whereas the BMW is a bit, rice burners don't seem to care. You can put any, it's what is the minimum in the UK? 95 RON on unleaded. I think it's slightly lower in Australia. I think it might be 80 RON.
Okay.
Yeah, there's something like that. So my brother had a VW over there and had all the trouble, and the bloke was like, "No, mate, you're not driving a rice burner. If you got to." More octane more parts per octane into this car. That's what I've done just with high performance cars, just to give it a little bit more. I'm guessing lubrication for the inside of the engine.
But Tony's got a Hyundai 1.6 i30, so he can give it a go.
I don't think it really matters, to be honest. I think just drive conservatively. Put a Church of England sticker in the back of the car. That might help you drive more conservatively. Don't drive aggressively. Let people pull out in front of you.
Be light on the throttle.
But he's in London, so it's like, well, you're never going to get good mileage in London because you're never going to get the speed up to the speeds that make for good mileage. You're always going to be peeing around from 0 to 30, but less aggressive on the accelerator is my only suggestion. Also check that your tyres are pumped up and you've got good tyres on the car. Take the bloody roof box off if you've got one of those, and anything like England flags or anything
causes drag.
Causes drag. Don't go around towing it. Don't tow a caravan. There you go. There's another reason not to have a bloody caravan.
And don't put like toys and bits and pieces in there. And so, it's like my car. My car's not got a spare wheel or anything. My car's got nothing.
Don't take the wife out for a drive. Leave her at home. How much?
Go everywhere on your own.
Yeah, exactly.
Tony, that's our solution. Go everywhere on your own.
Yes,
and get another car.
Get a bike.
Let's have a look in the mailbag. With the email this time. Is that Heidi from Cologne, Germany? She's emailed us and she wants to know, what vehicle would you buy for a tour around Europe? She loves the look of the VW camper van, but she's worried about reliability. Should she just buy a Toyota Hiace?
Okay. Depends how much money she's got. Go on.
Are we talking old VW camper van, or the old microbus, or one of the newer ones that are based on the vans?
Well, I imagine she's talking about the sort of camper van. I mean, because you can get an older one, like something like from the 60s, 50s or 60s. Then you can get like the Westphalia, which was the 70s and 80s version. Then they stopped production in the UK, but through Danbury you can buy, which is a Devon company, a Brazilian original. So they stopped those in about 2012, 2013, the last one. So it's effectively, it's a brand new old one. Or you can buy a VW camper van, which is effectively a camper van version of the van, which my friend had one called the California, which was lovely. It was very, very nice. Yeah. I mean, I think anything that's going to be old, you're going to have problems with. The Hi-Ace is going to be really reliable because it's Toyota. Do you know what I did see on holiday? I saw two of these were Toyota Hilux conversions, and it's obviously a Swiss thing because they both had Swiss plates on, and they looked good. It was like somebody put a box on the back of a Toyota Hilux camper van, but it looked good. It didn't look like I also saw a Unimog converted into a camper, which was hilarious, which is a big military German Mercedes-like vehicle with all-wheel drive. No, it was a Toyota Hilux, and it had been converted, and there were two of these I saw driving around down in Cornwall, and both with Swiss plates. So that's obviously something that exists. I don't imagine that's cheap. You're not going to lose any money on a Hi-Ace. You're not really going to lose any money on any sort of camper van. And that's the good thing about buying one, is you can buy it, do a year on it, as long as buy it secondhand, sell it secondhand.
The VW campers are pretty cool, so they'll hold their value pretty well.
Yeah. I'm looking at the time. Yeah, we've got to move on. Email now. I'll pretend I got a letter. Oh look, email now. Steve 066 emails in from Spain. Hola, Steve. He's a British expat. That lives down in Malaga. He's done so for a number of years. He loves his old Rover 800, but it's over 20 years old. Wants to buy a more reliable car. Now, does he buy one in Britain and register it there? Or does he buy one in Spain and register it there? He's still got a house over here. It's getting confusing. But he spends most of his time on the Costa del Sol because he's wanted for bank robbery in Essex. No, it's not. No, it's not at all. Okay, right. So this is going to get complicated because we've got Brexit round the corner.
Yes.
Now, at the moment, the law over here is that if you have a car and it's a foreign car, if you are living over here, you need to register it if you're not here on holiday. I would say safety-wise, it's probably going to be best to get a car in Spain, register it in Spain, insure it in Spain, get the MOT or the Spanish equivalent in Spain, and then probably easier to fly from Malaga to the UK and then just poodle around in a hire car. Because if you could do it a long enough, work out really what you want to use the car for. If you're only over here for maybe a month, maybe you could do a couple of weeks with a hire car, and then the rest of the time you could sort of manage without. Or you could drive your Spanish car over here and drive it round. People are going to think you're a tourist on holiday. I think because if you get in a crash over there and you've got a British car, British insurance, it's going to start getting confusing because I've heard that across borders in Europe, your insurance is pretty much invalid.
It's all messed up.
So if you have a crash with a car in France, and the car, even if the car is insured with AXA, and the French car is insured with AXA, you can't claim off that car. You have to claim off your own insurance.
Wow.
So in my mind, I mean, whether that's every single time, but this is what I've heard. So probably get the car in Spain. I don't know.
That's
I go and get a big. He likes it. It sounds like he likes big old fat cars, like a big old Rover 800.
I did see a Rover 800 at the weekend on Sunday on my way down to Heathrow. It was gold, pristine.
Well, if you want something like that, why don't you go buy a big fat luxury Seat? Because effectively, for the last 20 years they've been VW anyway. Big old fat. They must do the top of the range Seats.
I'm trying to think what one is because I do these Skoda. Is it Octavia or the Superb?
So whatever the Superb is in Seat land, Seat world, which I I would get one of those.
Yeah,
because you know
parts
that
easy to come by.
yeah, parts easy to come by. It's on the right side of the road, which does make life a lot easier.
Yeah, you might not just go to Britain. You might go to Germany or Italy. Or
Yeah, and then your
wherever.
life's easy. Yeah, I mean, and if you want to drive it back, you're going to drive it through France, which is also drives on the incorrect side of the road, like the Americans.
Obviously.
Or you can take it. I did actually meet somebody years ago that used to. It was a friend of my father's that was retired, and he used to spend most of all of the winter in the Canary Islands. And he would have summer in the UK, and then at the end of September, he would drive all the way through France, all the way through Spain. Then he would catch a ferry with his car and his caravan from Spain to the Canary Islands, live on the Canary Islands in the winter, and then come back on the ferry. How long that took from the Canary Islands, and if you don't know, that's way out in the Atlantic, just off Africa, and then come back like that. He did that for a couple of
wow.
Saved himself
quite an adventure.
Yeah. I believe so. Anyway, our advice: get a Seat. We've got one more letter.
Yes, one more letter. Final letter because we're running out of time. Joe 245, I think that's Joe. Says he lives in Singapore, but wants to know what is the most iconic British car ever made. He's going to get he's going to get a bonus next month. Oh, nice. And would like our opinions on what sort of British motoring classic he should buy. So what should we be thinking? Maybe Mini, maybe MG, maybe Stag. What should he go for?
I've been to Singapore, so it's not the most car-friendly place in the world.
Okay, I've never been.
So he's very, very busy. A lot of Malaysian cars, a lot of, I mean, obviously Japanese cars, because you're right at the tip of Malaysia. So he wants something funky for the weekend. So he's got to identify what he wants. I know there's a massive MG owners club in Malaysia to the north.
Really?
So yeah, big. They're really into MGs. So you don't need to really worry about cost of petrol. I can't remember when Singapore. It's pretty cheap in Malaysia because they've got all the oil fields there.
Yeah.
But I know you're going to get a lot of support out in Malaysia, and that's only next door. Right. So there are a lot of the British cars, and Malaysia had a thing in the 60s about Malaysians love Maxes. So you do see a lot of Maxes and things.
Really?
Strange. Yeah, they've got a love of British motor cars. And so I assume, because obviously it was part of the empire for good 150 years. The same with Singapore. So I imagine something like that. What do you want? Firstly, identify what you want. If you want something to go out and go a little bit rugged roads, then I'm going to say get yourself a Series 1 or even a Series 3 Land Rover. Get something, that could be jungle equipped. Off you go. They're still expensive, but if you go for a Series 2A, something that was Land Rover lightweight, probably pick one up for like $4,000, $5,000, or MG. I mean, the heat out there, and like we were saying last week, I'd always want an MGA. You can't have one in this country because they rot. But places that are hot, like Malaysia, like California, you can afford to have a car that won't really.
They won't rust.
They won't rust like they'll rust over here. So maybe something like that. Big issue, parts. So have a look around, get on social networks, start talking to people. Where can I get parts from? How available are parts? It's a bit different these days, obviously, with the internet. I mean, you can be in the arse end of nowhere and get yourself a car. You can have parts sent to you within 48 hours from the States. FedEx stuff. So it's all about personal choice. But yeah, I do remember we went to a hotel in Malaysia, and that coincided with the MG Owners Club of, I think, Penang were there.
Wow.
And it was just full of MGs. It was great to turn around. And then I'm being British. They're going, "Well, you're British. You really know all these cars." I go, well, I sort of know. That's a TD. That's a MGB GT, sort of. But and then they were like, "Oh, your grandfather had one of these. That's fantastic." I was like, "Yeah, sort of know, but not like you guys are really into it." So
brilliant.
That's my advice. Right, I think it's. I better. I'm just going to cue up the quiz music because it's about that time. We're nearly out of time.
Nearly.
Oh yeah. Yes, welcome one, welcome all. I'm your host tonight on the quiz that has it all. Glamorous ladies, an exotic location, and world-class prizes. This week, our lucky winner could walk off with an entire online series of the UK's #1 radio show, Car Boyz. online, completely free, as it is to everybody else. I'm your host, Richard Green, and unlike your regular TV quizmasters, I'm not involved in a Me Too sex scandal. Wheel of Fortune. Now, many of the world's greatest motoring names have a classic badge, so their brand can be identified by the man on the street. But how good are you at identifying that brand? By a description of the badge alone.
Ooh.
Now, if I said a half-naked woman pointing her hands forward, known as the Spirit of Ecstasy, you'd know that the badge or the emblem was for Rolls-Royce. So I have 20 little questions here to see if you can get the badge, the brand of the car, by my description of the badge.
Fantastic.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Are you willing? Okay. First off, a Spanish conquistador's head. And if you don't know what that is, that's basically somebody that would have been with Columbus with a metal helmet on. It's an American car. There's a clue.
I'm thinking possibly it's not Buick. No, that's a B.
You asked right. It's a non-existent brand. No. It's quite hard to start off with. It's DeSoto. DeSoto was a Spanish conquistador's head, and it was on the badge, but it was also, I think, like Wolsey, it was on a light at the front, on the nose of the car. A guy with a little metal helmet. One of so never mind. Two people shaking hands.
Two people shaking hands.
Yes.
Shaking hands. No. What? Two people shaking hands.
That's what it's supposed to represent. It's supposed to.
That is not Toyota. It is. It's from the Far East.
It is. Think Korea, maybe. A little clue. Got two choices.
Kia.
No. I'm afraid Hyundai.
That's it. Oh.
Now, similar to the Hyundai logo, the letter H. You should get this one.
Oh, Honda.
Well done.
Which reminds me of the episode of The Simpsons where Principal Skinner takes off the badge from... Someone steals his Honda badge and he tries to take one from a Hyundai.
No, my Hyundai. Okay, moving across the other side of the pond once again. A bow tie.
Bow tie?
A bow tie.
I never knew Sir Robin Day did made cars.
Thank you. We'll ask you, Margaret, for your answer there, please. Welcome to question time.
A bow tie. Bow tie. No, I don't know.
Chevrolet. That weird sort of cross. Supposed to be a bow. How crap is that? Okay, here we go. We're back on this side of the pond.
Okay.
A Viking longboat.
Viking boat. So it's obviously
non-existent car brand.
Sweet.
No.
Rover.
Okay. Now that was a Viking longboat pictured from the front.
Yeah.
A Viking longboat pictured from the side.
Lada.
Yay!
Yes.
Okay, 4 silver rings in a row.
4 silver rings in a row. That would be Audi.
Well done. The Olympic car brand. Coat of arms for the German state of Württemberg.
Coat of arms. German.
It's a German brand.
Porsche.
Well done. Yes, well done. It was Porsche. Ding! I think also Porsche, I think the state may have had a partly ownership of the brand at one point. Certainly VW was very much a brand owned by the state for quite a while. We're going to get easy on you now. Prancing horse.
Ferrari?
Yes. Ding! A bull.
Lamborghini.
Ding! Head of a ram.
Dodge.
Hey, ding! A reversed Z.
ZZ Top. Reversed Z.
A reversed Z.
Z reversed is Don't know. Trabant?
Opal.
Oh, yeah, reverse said.
Yeah, reverse said. Weird. A scorpion. Now, this refers to a brand within a brand, really.
Scorpion must be Abarth.
Well done, Fiat Abarth. Ding! 6 stars. 1 giant star, 6 smaller stars.
Subaru.
Ooh, well done. Ding! Griffin with a crown. So half eagle, half lion with a crown on top.
Griffin with a crown. Vauxhall.
No, I think Vauxhall was a lion. The old Vauxhall. Griffin with a crown, Saab. And later Scania.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Universal symbol for the male, and I don't mean a penis.
Volvo.
Volvo, yes, well done. So the female is a circle with a cross, the male is a circle with an arrow. Is that right?
That is right.
Yes. St. George Cross next to a green snake.
George Cross next to a green snake. Alpha.
Alfa Romeo. Ding! Well done. 2 M's, one above the other.
2 M's, one above the other. No.
If I said Mercedes, would that help?
Maybach.
Ding! Well done. 5-pointed star.
5-pointed. How many pointed star?
5.
5-pointed star. 5-pointed star. 5-pointed.
Communist. That's what I thought. It's just like you go. Oh yeah.
5-pointed star. No.
Chrysler.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You are not going to get this one. If you get this one, you're going to win the quiz. But you're not going to get this one. This is the really weirdest one I've ever heard of. And apparently nobody knows why this is the logo, why this is on the badge. A Native American headdress. So think First Nation people,
Yes.
or racists say, Red Indian headdress on an arrow.
On an arrow.
And it's a European.
A European?
Yes. Yes.
Native American with an arrow. It's probably someone crazy like the Italians.
Not too far. It's sort of in the right area. I think more Eastern Europe.
Polonaise, I don't know.
No, it's Skoda, and nobody knows why.
Really?
It's Skoda. Because you go to the Czech Republic, and the first thing you think of is, wow.
Native American headdress.
Yeah. So when I landed in Prague, all I got, there was just guys coming up to me trying to sell me turquoise and silver bracelets and Navajo blankets. We stayed in teepees for our entire stay in the Czech Republic, and we never drink firewater because white man bad with firewater and speak with 2 tongues. I'm totally confused as to why that has anything to do with it. In fact, if I was the First Nation people in America, I'd definitely be suing Skoda for reparations, because that's my goddamn image. Hey, 13 out of 20. That's pretty good, mate. Well done for that.
Okay.
And that's about it. We're going to go because we're running out of time. That's it from us, Car Boyz. If you want to get in touch, email the show carboys at carboys at outlook.com. So it's car-boys at boys with a Z at outlook.com. We'll endeavour to answer your questions, be they car related or not. We're on Facebook, car-boys at Car Boyz with 4 Z's at the end. Z. Car-boys at Car Boyz with 4 Z's at the end. Twitter, car-boys at car_boys. That's it from us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Get lost. Get alive. Ta-da.